Howdy folks, today I want to talk about the matchup between Fire Nature and Pure Shadow. This is a matchup I know pretty well because actually in the old BattleForge days my mate was a Pure Shadow player, and these days I switch between playing Fire Nature and playing Pure Shadow. So actually I might be better at Pure Shadow. I just beat Matt Novak a second ago, but probably won't post that replay. In this matchup, there are a couple important things to think about. So I want to talk about 2 points today, which is tempo versus permanent power, and I want to talk about, let's call it scale points, or it's about knowing which phase of the game your deck is strongest against another deck. So you can see right now, here is my regular 1 versus 1 Shadow deck. I play Shadow all the way with Voidstorm. I've got Mo to help close games, Cultist Master and Shadow Insect are very good for defense, and Ashbone Pyro is quite good, especially if you manage to go tier 3 versus someone who is still tier 1. The rest of the deck is pretty typical. Corpse Explosion is really nice. I play Knight of Chaos blue for the defense, Harvester of course, and yeah, so pretty typical deck. You can see I've got 5 slots for tier 3. That's a pretty typical number for Pure Shadow to have. Sometimes 4 if you throw in Unholy Power, but Pure Shadow typically has a number of slots for tier 3. Let me show you what I'm playing right now in my 1 versus 1 Fire Nature deck. You can see I've got 2 slots for tier 3, and actually those 2 slots are because you notice I don't have Ghost Spear. At the moment, Striker is really busted, and I realized that Striker is more expensive and less efficient than Ghost Spear, but in general, Striker's looting actually makes up for that. So Striker looting plus, for example, Roots or Oink is really, really broken, and so that's why I don't have Ghost Spear. This deck actually, this is a quite unusual deck. I've got Firestalker here because Burrower, in my opinion, is not that good versus things that are in the meta, so I'm trying out Firestalker. I think maybe a little bit better, but yeah, this is a bad example of a pure or early Fire Nature deck. So let me show you the free version, and you can think about that a little. That's maybe more useful to think about. So here is the free version of Fire Nature deck. This is, I guess, and I think Mortar is really weak right now. Sundra or Scorched Earth are both quite good. Ghost Spear, Burrower, there's no Voblet in this deck, and there's Giant Slayer and Vulcan, right? So if you want to play a typical Fire Nature deck, and you want to have Giant Slayer, which I think is really strong in the meta, you're either dropping Burrower or one of your tier 1 cards or one of your tier 3 cards. But you can see, like, basically, even with optimal tier 3, you've got 2. And that's 20 tier 3 charges total. So I want you to think about that. This is going to come in important later. Fire Nature has 20 tier 3 charges. For Shadow, I've got like 16. Is a lot. Especially if this was fully charged, there's 4 more. And it's like double the number, it's more than double the number of tier 3 charges. And, you know, if this were Silver 1 Lancer, and I were playing, let me show you how that. Another really popular way is that you replace this card with Silver 1 Lancer, you replace this card with Ice Shield, and that's another popular way. In this case, actually, Silver 1 Lancer would probably replace Shadow Insect, and maybe you have Evocator's Woe, or maybe you still keep, maybe throwing Gore, or keep the, yeah. So that's how this looks. Okay, so you're thinking about playing Pure Shadow versus Fire Nature. I mentioned the 2 things you want to focus on are tempo versus permanent power, and you want to think about skill points. So I've got 2 replays I want to show you. And in those replays, we're gonna think about those plans, but I want to explain tempo versus permanent power right now. So, as hopefully you know, because it's a really basic concept in PvP, but if you don't know, then maybe I need to make a video about that. When a unit dies or a spell is cast or building is destroyed, so for example, Harvester costs 300 power. If he dies, if I kill him myself, or if he just dies from a unit, what happens is that 90% of that power goes back into my void pool. So this will eventually recycle back into my power pool over time. 10% is lost. If you lose a power well or a monument, 0% goes back into your void pool. So if you think about in terms of permanent power, it's actually worth it to spend 1,000 power to kill someone's power well, because that's the equivalent. You know, if you spam eruption so many times that it costs 1,000 power, that's actually the equivalent of, you know, your permanent power lost as the power well that you just kicked. Same thing if you kill an orb. Both power wells and orbs, to rebuild them, cost 100 power. Now in practice, that's really not worth it. You can see there's this card, Cursewell. Cursewell costs, well, if it's upgraded, that's 200 power. You can see 200 power to play it upgraded level 3. This instantly kills a well, so basically what you have is you're spending twice as much, you know, you have a tempo loss of 100 power, but you have permanent power gained of 100 power, right? Or actually it's 80 power. So, Cursewell at this point is definitely not as broken as it used to be. There's a funny video on my channel about a song playing Cursewell because they used to be super broken. But that's the idea, right? So it's not actually a good idea to spend 1,000 power to kill one power well, because then your opponent has 1,000 power, and realistically he's going to be able to kill way more than one power well, unless you have Void Storm. That's basically the only situation in which it would make sense, is if you have like some huge crazy amount of power and you can just Void Storm and kill everything. But in general, 1,000 power is more than enough to kill one well, so it's not a good idea. And you'll see, depending on the matchup, right? If you have something like Shadow Frost versus Shadow Frost, both of these are really defensive. So this is a situation in which Cursewell is really strong, because it takes a lot of power to kill someone's well, so the defense is really strong from both sides. If you have something like a Pure Fire matchup, then wells drop super fast, and so you want to be very conscious of making sure you have a lot of tempo versus permanent power. And in Fire Nature versus Pure Shadow, that is another of those matches where the tempo is so very important that in many cases you probably shouldn't be taking any wells. It's not as bad as like a Pure Shadow Mirror, but it's definitely one of those. So let's think. That's the first thing to think about. It's not actually you can't never take wells, because there are definitely situations where Pure Shadow has a difficult time initiating an attack against Fire Nature, and if Fire Nature doesn't have Vile Blood or something like that, then it can be difficult to initiate an attack back. But Fire Nature usually has a pretty easy time initiating an attack. The other thing to think about is scale. So you can count right now, I've got 5 tier 3 cards, 40 charges, and consider Fire Nature's 20 charges with 2 tier 3 cards. So if you get to tier 3, then Pure Shadow should win, basically without exception. So there's even been times where I've been like, as Pure Shadow, down several wells and still managed to win just because it outscales. The same thing kind of applies in tier 2 though. You notice that Pure Shadow does not have a lot of tier 2. Fire Nature has a ton of tier 2 and a ton of tools to really replenish Pure Shadow's tier 2. So as a Fire Nature player, it's often totally fine if you lose a couple wells but manage to keep your tempo up, because that will allow you to kick someone's orb, and then you're playing tier 2 versus tier 1, and even have twice as much power as you, it's still fine and even better for the Fire Nature player. So let's look at some replays and go through those concepts. I should also mention, in the specific matchup, Pure Shadow relies a whole lot on Shadow Mages, and there are a lot of interactions which are quite favorable for the Fire Nature player. For example, if you take a Skyfire Drake and you ravage it, this is one very specific interaction, but basically one Skyfire Drake can kill an unlimited number of Shadow Mages as long as he manages to attack them one at a time. See, one mage gets one shot, he is able to heal. Actually, that did manage to kill. So I need to remind myself to cut this portion.
Shadow Mage at your service. Shadow Mage.
For example, one Skyfire Drake with Ravage can kill basically a limited number of Shadow Mages as long as you attack them one at a time. And if they attack you more than one at a time, that guy's going to get 2 shots, right? You can even dodge them like this. And you can just come back and wait for them to fill up. Keep shooting. And to do that again. For example, one Skylords Reborn with Ravage can basically kill an unlimited number of Shadow Mages as long as you are able to engage them one at a time. And you can make sure you engage them one at a time by using cards like this. So here there's a couple shooting at me, I'm going to run away. Oh, this is only just two. For example, one Shadow Mage, or one... For example, one Skyfire Drake with Ravage can basically kill an unlimited number of Shadow Mages as long as he can engage them one at a time. So this guy will die, he's only going to get one shot off. Spawn the second one, Ravage will heal him up enough in time, only one shot off. And if multiple Shadow Mages come, then the Skyfire Drake can, if you have ground units, you can just lava field, or you can erupt them, or you can flank them, root them. There's a whole lot of things, which is why Skyfire Drake is really oppressive in this matchup. So, overall, this matchup is quite in favor of Fire Nature in my opinion. I think it's Fire Nature's possibly easiest matchup, although that may be partially because I have a lot of experience, so I know it better. Right? Bandits may be worse. So overall, because of Fire Nature's oppressive Tier 2 abilities, especially if you have cards like Vile Blood, and my deck is specifically, really strong against Pure Shadow, I think it's the easiest matchup for Fire Nature. Now maybe there's some others like Bandits that are actually easier, but I don't play Bandits that much, and I'm quite familiar with the Pure Shadow matchup, so I think that's a good matchup. Okay, so let's take a look at the replays. By the way, for anyone who's not sure about replays, you can hit this thing here, which is the Chronicle, and then replays are on this tab right here. And let's start with a, this would normally be a rookie review sent in by Metagross, but in this case, I'll actually cast it as, this is part of my BattleForge University series. So this is a game between Metagross and Runz. I know who Metagross is, I interact with them in the community a lot. I don't know who Runz is. You can see that Metagross is starting with Strikers, which is a really... I think this will be a brief moment in BattleForge history where we're seeing Strikers. Strikers have been good, actually, apparently, for a long time, but nobody's used them for a lot of reasons I could talk about philosophically in a different video. And right now, they're considered really strong, oppressive, and need to be nerfed. We see that Metagross has taken the early well, Runz has taken the early well, and Metagross is going for more Sunstriders. So that's a good thing to do. So here's the thing about in Fire Nature. I rambled a whole bunch and probably lost a bunch of you so far, but the idea is that Fire Nature wants to keep well counts low in order to keep the total power level low, right? Because if things get to a tier 3 situation, then it's really bad for Fire Nature and really good for Pure Shadow. Okay, this Striker interrupted that charge right there, so that's not good. These guys are really poorly placed. Metagross could be looking for Eruption, and Eruption costs 75. That'll be a clean 25 power gain if he manages to get that Eruption up. He's got the power. There's Eruption, clean 25 power gain, anti-damage the Dread Charger again. Right, so that's really good. What Runz needs to do, he needs to run back here and make more Forsaken and stall. 25 power is not that much once you wait for Void Power to come up, but it is going to be a big tempo lead for Metagross. But Runz is actually doing something which is not good, right? So let's think about this mathematically. Here's a short tier 1 lesson for you, even though this is supposed to be a Fire Nature versus Pure Shadow tier 2 matchup. By Runz coming over here, he has isolated himself. So if he wants to make more units, like let's say more Forsaken, then there'll be days they'll do half damage, they'll have half health for 20 seconds, 18 seconds, and they can easily be erupted. So Runz can't make more units here, they'll just die. Metagross can come over here and attack, and if Runz keeps his unit here and doesn't make anything else, then he's basically down 60 power, right? So 60 plus 25, that's an 85 power disadvantage, which is almost as if he's down an entire will. So something to think about. What Metagross should be doing is coming over here to attack, and Runz's Dread Charger is basically useless. Instead, since Metagross is following him, Runz, he made more Strikers here, which is I mean, the Dread Charger will outrun them anyway, so I'm not sure that's the best move. But basically, Metagross has a ton of power in tier 1 units chasing this 160 power unit, which has allowed Runz to go tier 2. So, if Metagross had been taking this to attack in tier 1, then that would be a nice aggressive position. Runz wouldn't have been able to go tier 2, and the game probably would have been over already. The other thing to think about, Metagross is already tier 1. He's got Strikers, which, as we mentioned, are really good against Shadow Mages, because Shadow Mages have low health. Metagross can just take this well and defend the bottleneck. As long as he can go tier 2 before a Harvester comes out, he's totally fine. I mean, not... Pure Shadow has other tools besides a Harvester, but with this unit composition and already the 25 power advantage, and waiting for the Dread Charger to go up, plus the power advantage from having this monument, Metagross should be fine to sit here and defend tier 1 if he knows what he's doing. Rushing tier 2 is not the right call unless you have Sunder. Actually, Sunder is quite strong against Shadow tier 2. The Dread Charger, as long as he moves just a little bit, then will interrupt the charge. And now we're in a position that's quite bad for Metagross, because these guys are small, they don't have much health, they'll get killed by the Dark Elf Assassins, and knocked down by the Shadow Mage while the Dark Elf Assassin kills them. So this is like a 200 power, 210 power tempo loss. He's gonna, not 210, 230 power tempo loss. Okay. He's just gonna die, he's not gonna kill anything except maybe this Dread Charger, which is from tier 1. So, all these units are dead. Oh, maybe he killed the Shadow Mage, but still. As Runz could stance these Dark Elves, and the Shadow Mage I don't think was going to drop. That Eruption also, it did nothing, so Metagross right now is in a quite bad tempo loss. He's gone tier 2, so that's fine to have the tempo loss, because we already talked about how Fire Nature has a really good matchup, but that's, this is a quite bad position to be in right now. This Nightcrawler is going places. As Pure Shadow, I think what should happen is that he should be trying to take wells which are far away from his opponent, and he should be trying to increase the power level so you can get either Harvester or you can get tier 3. Those are the two main win conditions against Fire Nature. So you have Burrower coming out. Burrower is not that effective against Fire Nature, or against Pure Shadow in general, because it just gets knocked down by Shadow Mage, and Nightcrawler can chase it across the map. In general, something that you can see Burrowers do is that they spawn at one point, and then they run away, and then the slow units have to chase them, and then they can attack somewhere else if you get like a temporary power advantage. That's not... Okay, so a couple things. One, Metagross took a well here, which is bad. Well, hard to say if it's bad, per se. But the lower the power level is, then the easier it is for Fire Nature to make a really critical play with like a 50 power Oink or a 50 power Ravage or a 45 power Roots. And so keeping the power level low makes those really critical, right? Because if you have a ton of power flow, then let's say you Oink 3 Shadow Mages, and then Shadow can just make 3 more Shadow Mages, and the units you were using died, and the Oink was wasted. So that's why you want to keep power levels low in general, as Fire Nature versus Pure Shadow. And then also because of that idea of the tier 3. So Ghost Spears have stanced. This is good. He'll get Hurricane. Good from Runes from not stancing them up yet. And we're going to see this Burrow try to do something. I should also mention that Runes took 2 wells at once, which is almost always a bad idea, because if you have 2 wells, then why don't you just go tier 3 or make a Harvester? And, I mean, not tier 3, there's not that power level for tier 3, but a Harvester, for example, would have been really strong. Is this Burrower going to run away? No, it dies. Because Metagross has used 2 Oinks, but it didn't really accomplish much. His units have died, and Runes is in a very awkward position, and he's even managed to be up 1 well this whole time. So a bit of an ineffective trading pattern, I think. Instead of using Burrower, Scythe Fiends are good enough. Here's the Scythe Fiends, that's good. Scythe Fiends are good because they're fast. They are good against small units, which are one of the things Arctic Assassins are used a lot against Fire Nature. And also, because Scythe Fiends can be spread out, and then the Shadow Mages can like knock back some of them, but not all of them. So Metagross, you could just Ravage these up, or you could kill them and run back to heal. I think you should Ravage up. And you can also heal with the Surge of Blake. And now we're in a position which is basically impossible for Runes to defend, actually. So this well is dropping, I can tell you that. Yeah. Runes needs to have, right, there's 200 power here. Runes has his 200 power in the bank. He's probably saving for a Harvester, but, right, if he had 1 less well, he'd had that Harvester already. Runes could be looking, he could be looking for, like, playing something in Nasting, or maybe an Out of Chaos. So maybe it's premature to say this well is lost, but I do not like the positioning of this. Remember, Pure Shadow doesn't have any sort of building repairs. Right, never see the Oink. It just takes them out, and he can just well focus. I think it's probably slightly more efficient to go for the Shadow Mages, but well focusing works just as well. This can be erupted at any time. Very good eruption. And Metagross can finish off the Shadow Mage. He could probably even Ravage his own guys. Maybe go after the Shadow Mage. Just a couple hits to take him out. Another thing to think about in this matchup is that Shadow Mages have 12 charges, I believe, which is one of Pure Shadow's strongest rules. Instead of a Oink, I probably would have gone for a Root. I probably would have gone for an Oink there, just to take out the Shadow Mages. There you go. There you see how the Shadow Mage knockback doesn't involve squads. So that's really good. He's going to come over here and take a spot here. This well was able to get about 50 power out before it died, so it's still not... So it's still good for Metagross. He has gained a permanent power advantage, but you notice he's kind of lost some tempo, because Pure Shadow has a lot of units on the field, and he's running around. So that's something to think about. Pure Shadow, Fire Nature can basically just burst these walls down. Here we see Nightcrawler attack. There's a Root, that's good, but he needs to get a Skyfire out. Ghost Spear works too, but I think Skyfire is a little more useful, and this Burrower is going to open it. These Scythe Fiends might take this down. By the time the Burrower gets here, he might be able to interrupt it. Very good heal. But I think this might be dropping. Runes could... He does have that rinsing up. And one thing that Runes could do, he could play a Corpse Explosion and kill his units, and that would just kill these and kill the Ghost Sphere. That's one way to do this. So, Runes has now lost 2 wells. I mean, even a Nasty Surprise will kill this. So Metagross has lost 1 well, and Runes has managed to stay 1 well up the entire time. So this well extra has basically... No, they're even on wells now. Never mind. they're even on wells. But
Your
I think this
forces
well's
are
paid for
under
a little more.
attack.
I think that's a good decision from Runz to take more power. And he's now up, again, one well more than his opponent. Runz has a lot of units on the field, which he wants to get rid of. Right, because generally speaking, as Fire Nature can get rid of units really easily with something like a lava field. This Daze Drake, this Nightcrawler can just come over here and nasty, or this guy can come over here and nasty. I don't like Daze Drakes in almost any situation.
Shadow
So yeah, as Fire Nature can play like a lava field or some CC and remove units quite easily. So having all these units here is not necessarily that good. Okay, here we go. The Drake died. So I think should be trying to make his units in an offensive position. Also, remember, because Fire Nature has a lot of CC, so if he has his units defensively, then Metagross can just run away and spawn some more units to attack and just keep his units running forever. Whereas if you're attacking, then your opponent can't run away, right? Power wells don't move. So, you see so far, Metagross has kicked one extra well, maybe two extra. Yeah, I think it's one extra well. Runz has been building more wells, but you see how much power Runz has on the field, right? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 250 power and a Nightcrawler. So more than 300 power Runz has on the field compared to Metagross, right? So if Runz can convert his 250 or his 300 power of tempo into a power advantage, then he's still doing very fine, right? So this is something for Metagross to think about, is that he's been kind of like brute forcing his way into killing wells, which works, especially against Pure Shadow where there's no defense. But what's happening is that he's suffering a tempo loss every time he creates a permanent power, and at some point he's going to create a tempo loss so big that his opponent will be able to do more than kick just a couple wells. Right, like you see it right now, the map controls lost. That was a really bad lava field. It killed only one unit. Runz can get his units out here to this spot and try to lock Metagross out of the map. There's a Skyfire Drake. I don't think that's good. Even Dark Elf Assassins, if they get close enough to Nasty, they can kill that Skyfire Drake. Or they can stance up. Should take... Oh, don't come back. Okay, the Skyfire Drake's out of daze, so that's okay. Metagross's power is quite low, Runz's power is quite high. It looks like he's saving for Harvester, probably wants to spawn Harvester daze. There's a preemptive route from Metagross, but he doesn't really have power to do anything about it. He's got a Burrower coming on the side. Runz spawns Dark Elves Assassins. I don't really understand the point of that. And I'm not sure if Runz is looking for tier 3 or for Harvester. I think tier 3 is, depending on what it is tier 3, it's a pretty solid win condition against Fire Nature. The Harvester is also really good. Okay, so now you see what I was talking about. Runz is putting all his units backwards to defend, and Metagross can just run away, right? And so as Runz's units get all spread out, then he's just not being able to be very effective. There's not a Chaos will save this wall, but then, that's 50 power spent that the throwers can just run away. Meanwhile, Siphon's coming in here. This Drake should be doing something besides just sitting there. And Brewers are running away. Very good oink. This Nightcrawler was immune, but that's fine. I think this is still going to drop. One thing you can do is you can play Hurricane, which does like a little bit of damage every now and then to prevent it from dropping. And it'll prevent it from repairing. And meanwhile, Runz goes tier 3, which I think is a very good move, right? He's going to lose this wall, so what? He's got all these units standing around. He's got these units too, and he's going tier 3, right? So Metagross is only, his shot right now is he can go tier 3. No, he can't. He doesn't have power. He can go tier 3, or he can launch a bunch of tier 2 units to attack. But Metagross, or not Metagross, Runz, at this point, he's got tier 2 units at every base. This well was not a good choice. And this well was also not a good choice. Okay, both of these quite bad choices, right? Instead of this well, Metagross could have gone tier 3, and he could have played Giant Slayers, right? Runz has all these power in tier 2, right? It's probably over 300. He's got all these units in tier 2, which doesn't really matter because he is already tier 3. So these units are kind of useless, not worth that much, right? So what Runz should be doing, he should be putting all his units to attack, prevent Metagross from going tier 3, and then when his tier 2 units are dead, he can go push tier 3. So Metagross has two options when he sees his opponent go tier 3. Taking a wall is not one of his options. He can go tier 3 himself, try and spam Giant Slayers, and take advantage of the fact that Runz has all of these tier 2 units. So that would give, the tier 2 units is another way of saying there's a tempo advantage in Metagross' favor, right? Because these units aren't doing anything. That gives Metagross power, kind of, because his power is not bound. His power to do something else. So Metagross could push tier 2, or he could go tier 3 himself. I wouldn't recommend pushing tier 2 in this situation because of how much power Runz already has bound in the spot. But going tier 3, getting a Giant Slayer, and doing the same thing he did with Burrowers with the Giant Slayers, I think is a viable strategy. Pure Shadow has a difficult time removing Giant Slayers. It usually forces something like Void Storm. But we'll see. You'll see some proper tier 3 play in the next matchup. Metagross is going tier 3 himself. Remember, he's down 100 power because of the well he made. That well will not pay off for 200 seconds, which is more than 3 minutes. It's 3 minutes and 20 seconds. That's how long it's going to take this well to pay off. So we can see we're 11 minutes and 30, so it won't pay off until like 15 minutes, when the clock says 15, right? At that point, we'll say that Metagross has gained power from his well. I guarantee you the game will be over before that happens. So Metagross is tier 3, he doesn't have that much power. Runz has a lot of power, especially because his tier 2 units are starting to die. And he has rebuilt his wells, which I don't think is the correct response here. But it's also fine because Pure Shadow is so strong. Giant Slayer dies quite easily. Runz is doing a good job with his tier 2 units to apply split pressure. And there's not a good way to deal with Giant Slayer in the Fire Nature deck. You can play, what I play is I play Mutating Maniac with the Poison, which is pretty effective against Giant Slayers, pretty effective against Ashburn Powers generally. You can play Virtuoso, which is a niche card, it's not that often used. By the way, Pure Shadow could play Corpse Explosion and take care of all this. So, Corpse Explosion, I mean, that still works. Still got it out. And now it's tier 3 versus tier 2. And you can see Runz has a lot more wells. So, there was a Void Storm. It was barely worth it, like 200 power versus 180 power. So, okay, fine. Now Metagross is going tier 3, and Runz is got an Ashbone coming. So, one thing to think about as Fire Nature versus Pure Shadow is that you want to keep the well count low, which means you're trying to trade wells. So if you see your opponent takes a well, you don't always have to just rush there immediately, because if you just rush immediately, Shadow Mage spam can often take care of you. You want to make sure you've got, you can rush, and you also have some back power some back pocket power for, like, some roots, some CC, some monofields, so that if your opponent does spam stuff, you can take care of it, right? And it's okay. If your opponent spams stuff, and it takes you 3 minutes to kill as well, as we just discussed, 3 minutes to kill as well actually means that you're still going to be having a power advantage once you do kick as well. And even if you kick it exactly when the power is equal, the end result is that the void powers stayed the same, so power levels didn't increase, which is good for your Fire Nature, right? Because you want to try and keep the void powers low. So I'm not saying never take a well, right? If your opponent takes a well and you can either take a well yourself or do nothing, then obviously take a well yourself, right? There's some situations where there's not a good way for you to attack. But I think in general, Fire Nature should basically be always trying to attack, and if Fire Nature is always trying to attack, there's not a good way for a Shadow to attack. And right, you can see how strong Ashbones are. There's not a good counter on the Fire Nature deck. They kill Giant Slayers before they get raged up. And yeah, so we've seen so far actually, Runz only needs 2 cards in this deck. He's got the Ashbones and the Cultist Master and the Voidstorm. So we've seen 3. Yeah. So this game's over. It's not been 15 minutes. And you can see this well was not paying for itself, right? So something to always think about, right? If your well needs to be, things need to have not moved that much for 3 minutes, right? So if you're kicking your opponent's well and you take a well first, well then you could have done more than you did if you didn't take a well. And if your opponent's kicking your stuff, well then obviously you could have defended better if you did take a well in the first place. So those are things to think about, and this game's over. So let's take a look at the next game, and this is one of my games playing as Pure Shadow. So this is my game versus Aendriel. I did not know Aendriel was playing Fire Nature at the time. But in general, I think Pure Shadow outscales Fire Nature and Pure Fire. In both cases, Harvester is pretty much the win condition. Before the Harvester comes out, Pure Shadow has a hard time. So I go for the first. Well, Aendriel is playing Strikers, which means that I don't want to engage because attacking versus Strikers is just too risky in my opinion. So I prefer if he comes to me, that way he has to make more Day Strikers. Because yeah, Unday Strikers at the base that charge instantly, I don't want to deal with that. So I make 2 Dread Chargers, because Dread Chargers are immune to the charge. As you saw last game, if they walk around, they can stop. And the other thing about Strikers is that they don't do a ton of damage for their power cost. I think they're probably maybe that's wrong, but probably the only shadow or fire creature that has like less than 10 damage per power, basically, right? 780 is not 900. So I felt safe-ish taking this well. That was a nasty. I don't know if I'm going to clean up, but I did take care of the Strikers. And we see that my opponent has taken a well himself, right? Now his Fire Nature. Fire Nature gets outscaled by both Lost Souls and by Pure Shadow. So, because he knows this, he should probably be not taking the wall. Now, when I saw the wall, I thought that, here's the mind games, Pure Fire outscales Lost Souls. So since he's taking walls really aggressively like this, I also take walls really aggressively, and I think that I'm playing Pure Fire. And I think that he thinks that I'm Lost Souls. I hope that makes sense. But basically, I know that as long as I keep walling up and as long as he keeps walling up, that this should be my advantage, no matter what he's playing. Because my deck with its 5 tier 3 cards should outscale every other deck that starts with Fire tier 1. At least once it gets to tier 3, or until the point when I can get a Harvester. So we're both at 4 wells extra, and I'm totally fine with this. And as you can probably guess, we're going to have most of this game happen in tier 3. This is a mistake from me. He can just run away. So, small mistake from me, good from him attacking with those two Sunstriders, and I decide to go tier 2. He goes tier 2 as well. And this way I'm going to be able to use my Days Forsaken to take out one of his Sunstrider squads, maybe? Nope. I tried to suck him up, didn't manage it. So, okay. Aendriel has out-microed me by 50 temporary power, by permanent power. And I see his Fire Nature, which makes me feel not great. Or not, let's say not great, but Fire Nature has a strong matchup, probably the worst matchup for Pure Shadow. So I'm, afraid of what's coming. On the bright side, we are having 4 wells, which is a large power income, which means I'm going to get a Harvester out soon, or be able to go tier 3 soon. So it's not the end of the world. And my opponent, as we're going to see, he likes to play tier 3, so this is what's going to happen, is that he's not going to push too hard in tier 2, and we're going to get away to a tier 3 situation. I've got my Treasure over here, and basically I'm going to take tier 3 right now. Because I know that the power income is high enough. Actually, the void levels are ridiculously tiny. So I didn't think about that actually. Um, I thought things were, yeah, that's really small. So actually, this was, I guess, a mistake from me.
What do you
My opponent has a bunch of power. If he spawned a bunch of Wild Bloods, then he should be able to rush me, probably immune to the Void Storm. But my thought was that I can get a Void Storm out because we have a bunch of wells. It just, we're actually only 4 minutes into the game, so the Void powers are really low. I wasn't thinking about that. So this probably should have been GG for me, actually. Shadow Mage gets a hit off, the Skylords Drake dodges it. One pattern I might go for is if I can get one Shadow Mage hit, I could possibly Eruption, or cast my Drake over there. But yeah, at this point, I have power to Voidstorm, so I was thinking I should just wait, see what he spawns, and Voidstorm him, especially because he has more power bound in tier 2. At the end, I guess I decided to Ash my Pyro, and he rooted me, so I had to look him in, and he flanked me, but basically spent 100 power and lost his 150 power. I spent 75. So that was a good trade for me. I've got a Cultist Master. I'm going to come over here and try and get something going. Meanwhile, Ashbone Pyro is going to go here. The Orb is a relatively safe position. He's got a Giant Slayer, so I should probably play it now. There we go. Maybe I'll get that Giant Slayer. And there's a Vulcan, which is going to sure give me good micro from Aendriel.
A monument is
I
under
killed his
attack.
Giant Slayer here, but these Nightcrawlers will probably die before they get to the base. They might be close enough that I can go for a Corpse Explosion. But the Void powers are quite good. There's a Corpse Explosion. It's out at the Vulcan's health, let's say. The Shadow Mage makes short work of those Sunstriders, and I'm trying to heal this Cultist Master up. He's not quite close enough. I have life leaving to my Ashbone Pyro, and I'm trying to make something happen. At this point, I feel like I'm winning just because of the matchup. But I just, in my head, I see how many wolves we have, I see we're 3, and I think the Void power is a lot higher than it should be. So this is actually a pretty good position for Fire Nature to be in, with tier 3 with Void powers low. So basically what Fire Nature can do in tier 2, he can also do in tier 3, but with even higher damage per second with Vulcan and with Giant Slayer. And the improvement Shadow has is that Shadow can Void Storm, right? So you have to decide, at high power levels, Void Storm is super strong, but Cultist Master just gets beaten by, you saw, Roots, so you trade 45 power Roots for 60 power Cultist Master. There's another Cultist Master. Use both CCs here, so I should be able to attack him there with no issue. And this Giant Slayer is going to be a problem for me. He's raged up. If he played the green disenchant, then actually it doesn't really matter against Shadow. But yeah, I could possibly nasty my Ashbone to just make sure he dies. There we go. Oh, I wasn't out of the Pyro. Yeah, so you can see things are stalling. The Void power is increasing, which is good for me. And so far everything is even. Oh, that missed the Giant Slayer. Yeah, but trying to defend with Cultist against Fire Nature is not that good because just Eruption or Roots, and this Orb is going to drop actually. So he can just Eruption it. Decides to heal instead. I might lose this one instead. I'm not playing my Power Limit very well. Yeah, so my tier 3 drops. This Giant Slayer lives, so he can heal that up. And I can go tier 3 again. Looks like I'm trying to make a counter-offensive go here. I defend with Shadow Mage, I defend with Knight of Chaos. And I'm not going tier 3 again. I'm not playing on power limits, so that's quite bad for me. I'm wondering if I'm trying to go Harvester. I might be, but Harvester would be bad because Giant Slayers are pretty good against Harvester. Now I just play around power to go to 3, where he got Lava Field. And I can just run away with the Shadow Insight because it's going to die if I just try and sit there. I'm going tier 3, Cultist Master before he can interrupt me, for example. and the Shadow Insect's just gonna come back. He blinks me, but now I can get my Knight of Chaos, and I can teleport him away. There we go. I teleported him away. And at this point, I have 100 Void Power less than my opponent. But you can see he spent more total power than me. And I Corpse Explosion to get rid of his Void. So I'm just trying to defend. At this point, if I can defend, two things will happen. One is that power levels will scale really high, which benefits me. Two is that he'll run out of charges. I haven't been counting how many Giant Slayer charges he's got. There's a Bloodstorm, right? This may not have been power effective, but he got rid of the 3 of his Giant Slayer charges. He's only got 12 total, right? So a quarter of his Giant Slayer charges are gone. I think he's probably used... I guess he's used more than half of his Giant Slayer charges now, and I've got 3 Void Storms left. There's 2 more Giant Slayers. I moved my Cultist Master out front, so that if he wants it, it doesn't hit anybody else, and he can't root it. I'm going to force him to spend the root over here. Shadow Insect, I use the ability and take care of Giant Slayer pretty easily. And I've decided to might leave my Shadow Insect too. There we go. And I could run back with my Shadow Insect to heal up. He's gonna do that thing that was I'm gonna go do earlier, but just to run between our 2 bases. I should definitely heal that up. 2 more Giant Slayers. There's a Shadow Insect because I can probably even nasty it. Yeah, making Cultist Masters, I know that he can just root them over. That is not great placement for my Ashborn Pyro. But I'm going to stop this attack. Giant Slayers are coming. I've got 300 power bound in this, 1 defense, and I teleported his Spirit, which was not that great. I probably should teleport him up there. Meanwhile, Aendriel has taken another well. So, he's up 1 well, and he's taken out my Void. So there's 200 Void Power after me, and 100, 1 well up. And I go tier 3 again, and he's got some attacks going here. I can't make tier 3 units, I have to make just Nightcrawlers, and Instant Frenzy, I'm waiting for the Oink, and then I use my Knight of Chaos. Meanwhile, I've got units here, his Giant Slayer's going for me, I can use my Cultist Master ability. And I decided to take my 2 Ashborn Pyros and try and make something happen down there. I've got the Aura of Corruption, making it early, he's away, but again, the important thing is to try and I teleported him to my orb. I'm not sure if that was the best idea, because he can probably just, well, maybe not. There's a Corpse Explosion. He got teleported out of the Corpse Explosion, now he's going to kill my orb here. I've got those 2 Ashborn Pyros. His Vulcan plus the Oink should take care of them. If I life leaving 1, then the other one will wake up, but it looks like I'm not going to see that. And, okay, no, I did manage to kill his orb, so I need to get ground presence and take an orb for myself. At the moment, I am tier 2, but he's also tier 2. And now you can see the void levels are quite high, so power income is high. Him being 1 extra well up more than me is not that significant. And his void levels are actually pretty similar to my void levels. No, he's got 100 more void than me, and more power on the field. So that's definitely his advantage. But as we discussed, just due to the nature of my deck, at some point I'm going to just void storm everything. He's going to run out of charges, and there's basically no way for him to win. Got a Nightcrawler here forcing something out. Knight of Chaos can get a... Yeah, he did the allow field just for a split second for this finish going out. And he dropped another one of my wells. His Vulcan's going to be hard for me to take care of, although Shadow Insect does a good job. Yeah, Shadow Insect does a good job, because he has so little health. Ghost Spear's coming in. We're seeing the Ghost Spears, I guess, because he ran out of Giant Slayer charges. No, that's probably because he was tier 2 at that time. Cultist Master attacking. Personally, I like to run the Cultist Masters, even though it's not power efficient. It, it hurts the orb too, and it saves your CC charges for something else. corpse explosion. It forces a heal, so it was kind of like, nah, that wasn't really worth it. But I was able to get a mow out. You can see my opponent has a lot of power, but he can't do anything with it. He's also up 3 wells more than me. But you can see that him being up 3 wells doesn't matter. He's getting, 20 power, 18 power each from the Void Return. No on the field, so he can just spam CCs. But it's not going to help play the Oldest Master of the Battle Defense. He is flanking and CCing my Juggernaut, much the same way he should do against a Mo. And probably I should prioritize taking out the Vulcans. They don't have that much health, but they don't have a lot. Yeah, these are out of charges, right? The Vulcan was poorly timed, so I am going to finish the link just to try and get it out. And I'm going to kill in my 30. I got the monuments. The bow dies, but importantly, he is now tier 2. He's got some units, but if I wanted to, I can just Void Storm them away. And he's low on turrets, right? There's the Eruption, because he doesn't have a Nature Orb. And that's something else to think about. By attacking his Nature Orb, he is, tier 1.5. Because he can't play any CCs. He's forced to use Firesworn Eruption without any of the nature spells. And in this meantime, I can probably take out more worms. So at this point, I would say that I should be aiming for like Corpse Explosion or yes, or maybe just a Rational Pyro. I like Corpse Explosion too much. Yeah, it's not really worth it, but I like it. Yeah, at this point, I can be trying to win on charges, and I can be going full firms. Because if we've seen he's already up a bunch of walls, it doesn't really matter if he loses a couple walls, or even if I lose a couple walls. What matters here is getting at orbs. So he needs to be going straight for my orbs, and I need to be going straight for his orbs. There's a Corpse Explosion to make sure this dies, and then we'll kill everything. Knight of Chaos stalls this enough. Get my Cultist Master out, force an Eruption, or Link. But yeah, the problem with the Link is that now he can't link this. The health gone from the Shadow Insect. I might be out of another orb down there just to save my orb. Because that's kind of his only way to win, is if he can take my orb out. And he's super low on charges. Got a lot of power, but nothing to do with it. He's going tier 3. Oh, that's him, yeah. He's tier 2.
Your forces are under attack.
So you can see this tier 3 battle. I'm being outplayed basically at every step, but just because of the nature of my deck, this is something that is not something that can really be overcome. Right? There's just a point where that's it. The Corpse Explosion doesn't quite kill. I actually only did about 500 damage. But it killed the Gladiatrix, so it's probably actually worth it. Mo comes out. His power levels are still quite high, actually. Right? Because he has all those. He's got all those lows. I'm playing Shadow Mage because I guess I'm starting to run out of cards a little bit. And I didn't really want to Windstorm. And the Shadow Insect can't shoot if there's no corpses, and there were no corpses. And we see that even though he's fully tier 3, Aendriel is playing Burrowers because he's just out of turns. Now, I'm going to take a moment and mention this. He's got 2 Burrowers and Vulcan, so that's 260, Gladiatrix, so that's 300, 380, 300, right? So he's got about 400 power, I've got 350 power, so he does have more than me. A Voidstorm costs 100 damage, but I should definitely Voidstorm right now, because as we mentioned, he's running out of charges, power doesn't really matter, what matters is that my orb doesn't go down. If my orb goes down, I can't Voidstorm, I can't defend, he manages to win. So that's what happened, I Voidstorm, even though it was not power based for me Voidstorm, it saved my orb, which is all that I care about at this point. Right, I've got 20 power income from the Void, so losing walls doesn't really matter. What matters is that I can keep my orbs alive and take out his orbs. I'm playing Shadow Mages to knock them back for the DPS. Has to blank on just one Shadow Mage, so I can always netherwork them away. We should make sure it doesn't get too low. And it's kind of powered, so we can always we should probably eruption spam there actually to take out my orb. Although if you did eruption spam, keep in mind it would still be basically tier 2 versus tier 2 because you're out of tier 3 charges. So yeah, you can see he's been up. Yeah, there we go. He was able to just eruption spam my orb, but what's he gonna do about it? He's got 100 power. I've got power bound on the field too. He's playing his Vulcan, so I'm just gonna run away. Attack his spot up here, go tier 3 myself.
Are under attack.
You can see power income is super high that losing wells really doesn't matter. Right, I've only got 3 extra wells versus 6 extra wells, or 4 extra. Yeah, 6 extra wells. So he's taking twice as many extra wells as me. And just because there's that harvester, and yeah, he's just not able to do anything with his other turns. So this is how to play as Pure Shadow versus Fire Nature. Playing the Fire Nature side. I realize that both of these games are wins, but yeah, I think hopefully these two games gives you an idea of what to do. It's kind of ironic with both Fire Nature sides. By the way, these are gonna drop in just a couple seconds. There's not really any point in attacking them. This wall is probably about to drop. Yeah. Yeah, both these games I realize are actually Pure Shadow wins, which is not what you expect because Pure Shadow is heavily unfavored in this matchup. But this is how to play as Pure Shadow against Fire Nature, and I think hopefully I pointed out the tips of how Fire Nature could do better. In this tier 3, Aendriel played really good tier 3. Maybe the only thing he could have done better is if he'd focused my orbs a little heavier in the beginning, or maybe if he'd, instead of going tier 3 himself, he'd tried to rush tier 2. If he tried to rush with his tier 2 units with a bunch of mowers, because actually the low power is so low, the mowers would die. Yeah, so listen takeaways. Tempo versus foreign power. And in this game, the takeaway is about scale points and the fact that in tier 2, Fire Nature's got a big advantage, but in tier 3, Void Storm can just pick up regular charges, and no matter how much you're winning, you just can't close the game. Hopefully this is instructive for people who are not really effective. Thanks for watching.